So the last time we left off on this video, it was pretty much a cliffhanger. But, that's fine because I bet you like cliffhangers. Also, thank you so very much for the 40 subscribers. You can't even imagine how thankful I am with that. But with that being said, I wanted to actually make a subscriber goal. Can we reach 100 subscribers by the end of this year? That would be amazing if you could do it, and I know you can. So I'll keep posting content as long as you want it. Oh, and you're probably wondering, I went somewhere. I went with my family to a different place. It's not a vacation. It's just more like, we had to go see my grandparents and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm going to be back to regularly uploading, so, I guess watch out for that. Anyway, we start our story off with Deku going to school. And this is just normal school, not UA, because Deku actually doesn't know much because, he's been in Kunlun, and I guess he doesn't actually know much. He left when he was 4, so, yeah. But anyway, basically, Izuku goes to school for about 2 weeks before he goes to UA. And Inko starts to notice that Deku wakes up at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then he goes, then he goes outside and sits on his legs, like, in a kind of crisscross position, and just sits and, like, quiet, and doesn't talk, and he doesn't do anything. He just sits. And she thinks he's meditating, but she doesn't actually know. And even he sits through a whole bunch of stuff. Like, he sat through the rain one time and didn't actually move. And after it's been exactly an hour, and he can tell when it's been exactly an hour, he gets up and he goes back inside and gets dressed. Then he goes to school. He's been doing this. Sometimes he'll train, and he's been training after school a lot to focus his skills and get them sharp. And Deku also is absorbing all of the knowledge that he knows at school because he's learned how to have a photographic memory and some stuff like that. So basically, now's the time. Deku tells his mother that he actually doesn't want a recommendation to go to UA. He wants to show everyone his skill. So she says, but why? You could easily become a hero, Izuku. So why not just take the chance? And he says, I want to prove myself, Mom. I want to test my power against those who've already been here for longer. Especially since I've recently been told that I'm going to be a hero here. So I want to see how I compare to most of the other students in my class, or who are gonna, or maybe be in my class. I don't know. And she says, okay. And basically, the tests for all the other things, Deku actually fails, like the reading, writing test, because he doesn't know much. In the 2 weeks that he was at high school, he didn't learn a whole lot, but he learned most of math. And like, he basically, when I say he went to school, he had a private tutor who taught him, like, basically his grades stuff, and they went through a whole bunch of stuff in the 2 weeks, but it wasn't enough to, like, he doesn't have general knowledge. He just knows about math, language, geometry, and all of the rest of, like, a 9th grader's work, or like it'd be a 10th grader now, because 16. No, I say he's a 9th grader still. So basically, he gets caught up on most of that. So, he doesn't just think like a 4-year-old, but he doesn't know enough. So basically, his mom steps in and says, okay, we'll just pass for that one, because Deku hasn't been here in forever. So we'll give him a pass on that. So basically, we skip over to the exam test, and basically Deku is sitting there, like, sitting down, meditating, and everyone's looking at Deku because he's just sitting there and not moving a muscle, with his hair tied up in a bun, and just Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you how he looks. His hair actually got longer. It's around to his neck, so he wears it in a bun, But most of the time, he just lets it kind of hang the way it does. But he put it in a bun so it didn't get in the way or distract him. So he's just sitting meditating, and he's not humming or anything, and people are looking at him weird. And that's when Bakugo walks up to him and tells him what he's doing, and Deku doesn't answer him. And he asks him again, and Deku still doesn't answer him. And he asks him one more time and tells him that if he doesn't answer him, he's gonna explode his face. And then Deku still doesn't answer, and Bakugo goes to kick Deku in the face, and Deku grabs his foot and tells him, "What do you want?" And he says, "I want you to answer me, punk." And he says, "What do you want? I answered you." And he says, "Why are you sitting here?" He says, "I'm not sitting here, I'm meditating so that I can properly control my powers." Like, what? What's a meditation? Man, I don't care. You're lame. But Bakugo thinks in his head, he caught my kick. He must be pretty skilled. He may actually be a challenge. Deku also notices in his mind, he's like, wait a minute. That kick was pretty strong. He might actually be worth fighting. And Deku gets up and everyone jumps back because he just all of a sudden, like, people just blink and then he's in the air. He jumped all the way over the crowd straight in the air. He jumped far enough up so that everyone could see him. So basically everyone's just shocked because they blinked and he was gone, and everyone just looks up to see him, and he's just jumping up and down and jumping on his tippy toes and just moving around, and he's shadow boxing, and everyone sees how fast he moves and how he breathes really quickly. And they also see his tattoo on his shoulder, and everyone sees that it's a dragon. And basically Deku doesn't tell them anything and walks to the front. That's when President Mike says go, and Deku starts running off. And to put him in place, he is a significant amount slower than Ida, but not too slow. So basically, he's just running, and Ida's the head of the pack, and Deku's right behind him. And basically, Ida goes to kick one of the machines, and that's when Deku's arm, his shoulder tattoo starts to glow, and his arm starts to glow, and then he punches straight through a robot, pushing it all the way into hitting another robot. And Ida is completely shocked because there was a complete hole blew through the robot. And he runs over and starts kicking and punching all of these robots at the same time. And then he hits the ground, and these rocks just start coming out of the ground, and he drop kicks them into robots and stuff like that. And he just starts running and, getting points here and there and everywhere. And then that's when Uraraka is stuck under rubble, and Deku goes to save her, and he breaks through the rock but doesn't hit Uraraka, and he touches her leg, and he puts it back in place. He puts her ankle back in place and touches her ankle, and it heals. And everyone's shocked because it's like he has healing powers. And then he looks at the robot and tells him, "Robot, that was not very nice. You should learn manners." And after he says manners, he punches the robot in the leg, and the robot's leg just breaks clean off. The robot starts to fall, and that's when both of Deku's arms glow, and he starts moving and doing hand signs. And that's when he punches, and the robot's body, which is about to fall on him, flips all the way back over to the opposite side. That's when the test is declared over, and Deku tells Uraraka she's okay. And she says, "How did you do that?" And he says, "I can't tell you." And she says, "Why not?" And he says, "I just can't." And then that's when the medic team comes over to Uraraka and says, "Are you okay? We should take you to Heal Girl," or I forget whatever her name is, but basically the old lady who heals people. And then she says, "No, I'm fine." And she says, "Wait, what? Didn't you break your ankle or something, or sprain it?" And he's like, "Yeah. What's your name?" And he says, my name is Izuku, but you can call me Iron Fist. And she says, Iron Fist. Okay, well, Iron Fist here basically broke the rock and healed my ankle. And then the medic team says, you have healing powers? And he says something like that. And basically, Uraraka begins to ask questions about how he moved the robot, because he didn't even touch the robot. He just did a couple hand signs and said 2 words. And then he just said 2 words, and then the robot fell over. And she says, how did he do that? And basically Deku says, yeah, let's just say it's magic. And she says, magic doesn't exist. Don't be funny. And he's like, what? And then that's when they both walk over and they're declared their classes. So now the day is over and everyone's leaving, and that's when Deku tries to walk away, and Bakugo grabs him on the shoulder and asks him, hey, what's your name, kid? And he says, and Deku shrugs his shoulder, getting Bakugo's hand off him, and it says, I'm not a kid, I'm taller than you, and also my name's Izuku Midoriya. And she says, wait, Midoriya? Are you the kid of that hero mind meld? Or mind wave, or whatever her name is, man? Are you her kid? And he says, yeah. And she says, he says, why did you take the practical exam? And he says, because I wanted to show my skill. And then he says, sure, man, whatever. And then he walks away. Bakugo thinks in his head, he's the son of a hero. Of course he is. And that's when Todoroki sees Bakugo storming off and just scoffs at him. And he calls him pathetic. And basically continues to walk. Deku continues to walk with Uraraka and goes to the end of the street and says, well, this is where we part ways. Bye. And he walks home. So nothing really too important happens except for Deku's normal regimen until the next day, when he is officially brought into class 1A, and everyone is here who's normally in there in the canon. And basically Aizawa tells him that he's going to test their skill and that he wants to see what they can do with the quirk assessment test. And basically Aizawa calls out Deku by saying, hey, you, Izuku Midoriya. And Deku looks and he says, me? And he says, who else the name is Midoriya in here? And he says, well, that's a little mean. You didn't have to say that like that. And everyone gets quiet, and Aizawa says, huh, you're funny, kid. Okay, I like that. But don't get ahead of yourself. I'm your teacher here, so I can easily get you thrown out of my class. And Izuku says, huh, okay. And he says, now, what I was going to say before you interrupted me was that since we're going to do the quirk assessment test, the number 1 should go first. And Deku says, okay. And they say, put on your outfits. And he says, this is what I'm going to wear. And he says, put on your outfit. Deku says, okay, whatever. Puts on, a gym uniform and walks outside. Basically, the first test is the jump test. Deku jumps more farther than a normal human should, but that's not too out of the ordinary. The running test, he actually runs pretty fast. He's pretty fast. He clocked in at, he got to 20 miles in a couple seconds. And there's like, whoa, this kid's physically enhanced. What Aizawa says to himself. And then basically tells him, okay, let's see what your grip's like. And he says, do you want me to use my quirk? And he says, and Aizawa says, yeah, it's a quirk assessment test. What do you think? And he says, again, rude. And Aizawa says, just do the test. And he says, okay, but be warned, this will break your equipment. And Aizawa says, wait, what? And then Deku uses his power and breaks the grip machine and sends out a shockwave. And then everyone's blown back a little bit. And then Aizawa says, kid, you didn't have to go that far. And he says, I didn't. It's like, and then Aizawa thinks in his head, that was him going easy? This kid's a monster. He really did beat us. Gotta be careful with this one. He could be either a good ally or a horrible enemy. Thinking to himself, Aizawa shakes his head and says, okay, yeah, we get it. You're strong. Says, final test, the ball throw. And basically, he says, again, do you want me... Deku says, again, do you want me to use my quirk? And he says, yes. Go full power this time. And Deku says... He looks at Aizawa strangely and says, oh, okay. And grabs the ball and gets a running start. And throws the ball as hard as he possibly can. And it actually breaks the sound barrier. Sending a sonic boom. And blowing everyone back. And... the ball actually didn't go that far because Deku has a horrible throw, but it kind of went down. But for the split second that it actually was traveling, it broke the sound barrier. That's when Aizawa says, what? He broke the sound barrier? I mean, the kid's horrible at throwing. He can't play baseball, but he broke the sound barrier? He says, what's going on with Midoriya's kid? And he says... I think it's safe to say that you won. And then Bakugo steps up and says, what do you mean? His ball only went 51 meters. And he's like, yeah, but it broke the sound barrier. If the kid could actually throw, it would have pierced into space. He's like, or at least hit the mountain range that's beside us. And he says, whatever, man. You're just showing him favoritism because he's the kid of a hero. And then Aizawa says, whatever, Bakugo. Do you want to do the test or not? Because you can leave. Bakugo shrugs and snarls at Aizawa and continues to do his test. Bakugo does his test and Izuku is finished with his. Izuku was first in the ball throw. He was 5th in the running and second in the jumping test and first in the grip test. So, yeah. Basically, everyone's all talking about how Izuku is so strong and he's not even trying his hardest. And Deku and Aizawa basically says, hey kid, how would you like to do a little exercise? And Aizawa thinks to himself, I gotta see his full power because my quirk erasure doesn't work on him, so I need to know his limits. And basically says, how about we see a little test? And he says, okay. And then he says, you know what? Never mind. We'll do a whole class test. And basically, that's the change in this time. The first real change, except for Deku being, going to Kunlun. Basically, Aizawa is the one who does, like, the hero and villain test. So, basically, they go to the same place they did with All Might. And Aizawa tells everyone that they need to pick a team. There are 2 team captains. There's Todoroki and there's Bakugo. Pick a side. And basically, Izuku, everyone's looking at Izuku and he's like, what? I'm not a team captain. Just go pick a side. And they're all like, well, whatever side you pick, we'll join that side. And it's like, well, that's not fair to the test. That doesn't accurately show anything. And everyone's like, we don't care. We just don't want to be on the other end of that punch of yours. And he's like, of course I'd hold back. You know that, right? And it's like, yeah. But holding back still might not be enough. And everyone kind of shudders for a second. And Bakugo yells at him. It's like, what are you all talking about? You think this guy is so strong? You know what? I'll take him by myself. If you don't want to help me. And Kirishima says, nah, I'll help you, Bakugo. And he says, Bakugo sighs. And a couple other people go join Bakugo. And Todoroki has people and Nezuko's just sitting out with the last remaining people, and he's like, Teach, and Aizawa says, don't call me Teach, and he says, yeah, okay, but Teach, no one wants to join either side because they're scared of me. And he's like, didn't I just tell you not to call me Teach? And he's like, yeah, Teach, I know, but Teach. And he's like, what? It's like, people don't want to pick sides, so maybe I should be my own team captain. And he's like, why? That's not the point of the test. And I want to see how well you work together, not how well you do alone. And he's like, yeah, but maybe I could have the rest of the people who didn't pick a side yet. And he's like, I guess that's not a horrible idea. Sure, I'll let you do it. He says, sure, I'll let you do it. But only if you show me what you got. And he says, okay. So basically, Izuku joins, forms his own team. And he goes after Todoroki first. And everyone's scared and doesn't want to fight Deku because he single-handedly pushed over an entire metal robot, and they're scared of him. Bakugo goes head first and says, "What's your name again, kid?" And he says, "Izuku Midoriya." Deku answers. And Bakugo says, "Yeah, okay. Look here. See, I'm gonna have to beat you. And sorry that it has to end that way, but that's just how it's gotta go down. Cause you see, I'm top dog here. And that means that you can't be top dog. So that means I have to beat you." And Izuku says, "Well, why?" And he says, "Like I said, I'm top dog. And there isn't room for two on the throne." And he's like, "What do you mean throne? Man, look, you can be top dog or whatever." What he says using quotations. "You can do whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just here to be a hero." And Bakugo says, "You don't care, huh? You don't deserve power if you don't know how to use it." And he says, "What do you mean power?" And he says, "You know what I mean. People who are strong, people who are weak. The people who are strong deserve to be strong because they're strong. And the people who are weak are doomed to suffer." And he's like, "Yeah, I understand that. But people who are strong don't deserve to be strong unless they work for it." And he says, "Yeah, that makes sense. I believe in that. It's a shame I have to beat you now." And he says, "Wait, where's your team?" And he says, "Nah, I ditched them. I told them to go fight Todoroki's team. I want this to be a one-on-one. Tell your goons not to intervene." And he says, "I don't think they will. They're already defeated." And he's like, "Oh, that's a shame. Of course you're the last one standing. Anyway, enough talk. Let's fight." And he says, "Okay." And Bakugo runs at Deku and jumps, using his explosions to hover in the air for a moment, and does a spin heel kick, right, trying to hit Deku right on the head. Deku uses both of his arms to successfully block it and grabs Bakugo's feet and swings him and throws him. Bakugo recovers and hits a tree and pushes back, going straight at Izuku at speeds unlike anything else, and kicks Deku right in the chest, sending him through a tree and hitting another. Deku acknowledges that this is going to be a tough fight, and Deku starts getting beaten by Bakugo. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering, pausing the story, if you're wondering, like, well, you said that he could beat, like, a whole bunch of professional heroes, so how is he getting beaten by Bakugo? Well, Bakugo is a lot stronger in this what if. He's at least on par, if not above, Deku. And that's why I'm saying he's getting beaten, because he hasn't had training with a flying opponent. Because Xiao Lao was so big that he didn't actually have to come all the way out of his cave. He only had to, like, reveal his head to fight Deku. So he hasn't actually dealt with a flying opponent, and Bakugo is just as strong as him. So Deku is getting beaten and battered, but he's fighting back and he's beating Bakugo. And that's when he gets a clean punch on Bakugo, sending him fully faced falling towards the ground. He almost does a complete flip, but Bakugo catches himself and kicks Deku in the face, sending him flying. Bakugo has super strength in this what if, by the way, if you didn't already tell by him kicking Deku through a tree. Basically, Bakugo tells him, "See what I said? I gotta be top dog, and that means you gotta go down. So just give up. You can't win." And he says, "You want to know something? What's your name?" Bakugo, I've been holding back. And he's like, yeah, right. No, you haven't. You've been trying your hardest. And he's like, you're right. Yeah, I have been trying my hardest. That was a bluff. But I haven't used my power. And he says, oh, your glowing fist? What, do I need a nightlight? And he's like, you don't know what this thing can do. And Deku lights up both of his arms with his Iron Fist glow. And then runs at Bakugo slightly faster. And then that's when Deku punches Bakugo straight in the face, sending him through a tree. Through 2 trees, actually. And then Deku runs over to a tree and bear hugs it and rips it out of the ground and starts trying to hit Bakugo with the tree. Bakugo flies up and then falls down with his foot first, and then hits the ground, leaving a big crater and a huge shockwave. Deku goes flying back, but catches himself and starts running at Bakugo and uses his power and hits the ground and knocks Bakugo off balance and flip kicks him in the face, sending him flying. Deku runs and keeps on the assault and starts beating Bakugo. He's hitting him with punch after punch after punch after punch, and he's using his Iron Fist power right now. So he's literally these hits are like strong enough to break trees and stuff. Like, I mean, at this level, he hasn't actually unlocked all of his strength, and there's some things he doesn't know because he left immediately after getting his power. So he hasn't fully found all of the extent of it. He just knows how to use it for destructive force and to punch and to heal people. He's rapidly punching Bakugo and then uppercuts him and then drop kicks him. Bakugo is baffled and is breathing hard and is holding his chest for dear life. And that's when Deku kicks him and he flips over. And then right before Deku is about to hit him, Deku slams his fist down towards the ground, but Bakugo rolls out of the way and uses almost like a breakdance move motion to get back up, and then runs at Deku and puts his hand straight on his face and slams him down, and then says, it's over, yield. And then Deku says no, and then Bakugo's like, I guess this is the end then. And then he tries to do an explosion, but Deku throws him off of him and gets up and then grabs Bakugo by the head and tells him that he's going to beat him right here and right now, and punches him in his stomach completely with all the strength he has, and it cracks the ground, sending out a huge shockwave, knocking everyone else in the forest off balance and pushing out some trees out of the ground. And he defeats Bakugo. But yeah, I think that's gonna be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.